He has a lot of those games where, I just hit my first 2. That gives me a level of confidence to go into the next one with a little bit, more juice on it. And then he starts hitting them.
And let's go into the team now that could win the title this year, because they were 2 games away from winning the title last year. The Phoenix Suns, who I feel, again, like if we're looking at a Lakers team starting this mismatch of Dwight Howard and DeAndre Jordan at center, okay, now you have a Phoenix Suns team that is much more well-balanced for the modern NBA. That's going to be starting Mikal Bridges and Jay Crowder at the 3 and the 4, DeAndre Ayton at the 5. So this Suns team, I know there was a lot of, they just got lucky last year. They weren't that good. The Suns team's really good. You just weren't paying attention to them last year. And now I think, having gone on this run, this was a young team that outside of Chris Paul and Jay Crowder didn't have, none of their other pieces had playoff experience, real good playoff experience. Now they went to the finals. Yeah. So let's talk about Devin Booker more, because he got off to a somewhat slow start last year. There was a feeling out period between he and Chris Paul. And then, as the season got on, they each got more comfortable in their respective roles. What do you expect out of Devin Booker now that he's seen, he got the validation of, I'm not just an empty stats, or empty calorie stats guy. I can play meaningful winning basketball.
I think we're going to see much of the same that we saw in the later half of the year. I mean, I think he's reached that point now, in part due to Chris, where stats really doesn't play a whole lot of a role anymore. It seems like I think a lot of young guys are caught in this web where they come in and they know they need to put up numbers, right? So they make sure they check their own box scores. They go for 20 or 25 or whatever. And then after a few years, when they've gotten paid and they realize, we need to win a little bit more, and they start smelling that level of victories, like going into the playoffs or maybe going to round 2 or whatever, they start to come back and go, you know what? The numbers don't really interest me all that more. It's more about being in the moment of the game. What can we do to optimize this possession? What can I do to help my teammates better? And I think Devin is reaching that point. It seems like, at least in the finals, that he was really going off of intuition more so than, I need to do X, Y, and Z. And reading, where are my guys placed? Can I get Crowder the ball in the corner? Where is Cam? Is Cam lurking around? Is that outlet pass available? So there's so many things that goes into it. And I think for him, it's just a matter of taking that step. And I think he did. So I don't expect him to, just explode into a new version of himself this season. I just expect him to be more refined and come in with that mindset, knowing that, hey, we made it to the finals. I was productive in the playoffs. I don't need to prove anything anymore. Now it's just up to me to maintain my professionalism and do what worked last year and keep doing it, and keep learning from Chris, keep learning from guys around me, and pick apart their games and add on to mine. So I just expect a more wiser, more experienced Devin Booker, honestly.
Yeah. I mean, the efficiency the last 2 years has really shot up from his early, he shot 42.3% in each of his first 2 seasons. He was at 48.4 last year, 48.9 overall the year prior. So that is a great sign. I think the one area in which he could improve is, ironically, is a 3-point shooter. Yeah. He came in with, the reputation of being this knockdown sniper, and, he's hitting them. He's hitting a number of threes at a decently high volume, but he shot only 34% from deep last year during the regular season, only 32.1% in the playoffs. He's much more lethal and efficient with that off the dribble pull up in the mid range. So if he can become more potent from 3-point range, if he can get up to the high 30s, low 40s, that's going to make him, he's already almost unguardable. But
can I give you a fun stat?
Yeah.
Very fun stat.
Oh boy.
Devin Booker has only been an above average 3-point shooter 2 years of his career.
Oh, wow.
In terms of league average.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Year 2 or year 3. Otherwise, he's been below league average in 4 out of 6 years.
Yeah. That's interesting. So I would expect that scenario of his game that he worked on a lot this summer, and I would not be surprised if we see him bump that up. Because 2017-18, he shot 38.3 from three on 7.1 attempts per game. Those were career highs still, in terms of attempts and shooting percentage. So if we get that version, that version of 3-point shooting Devin Booker mixed with still this lethal mid-range artist
and free throw drawing ability.
Yeah. And I mean, a super, career 87% from deep. He had a slight downtick in terms of his free throws last year. He was at 5.9 attempts per game instead of 7.3 the year prior. But I think a lot of that was, Chris, he didn't have the ball in his hands as often as he did
right
the year before.
So in regards to Devin Booker, right?
Mm-hmm.
I feel as though, and this is not me looking off of like numbers or anything. This is just me watching him play over the course of several years and like just making a mental note. It feels when he's taking more threes, like being more aggressive from the outside, the efficiency seems to follow. Like he has a lot of those games where, I just hit my first two. That gives me a level of confidence to go into the next one with a little bit, more juice on it. And then he starts hitting them. And I think he's, for some reason, over the past couple of years, he's kind of like, no, I'm going to settle for this mid-ranger instead. Oh, no, I'm going to settle for this drive instead, where he's even passed up wide open threes. I just wonder if it's sort of a mental thing. Maybe it's not something that's related to ability. Maybe it's just him having to like decide, okay, you know what? Screw it. Let me take the three. Let me up my attempts a little bit, because it seems to be a little bit of a thing that's in his head.
It's an interesting point, and I'm excited to see how. I'm assuming the Suns are going to hit the ground running this year, just as a team. I mean, coming off the finals run, they didn't make a ton of substantive changes this offseason, so it's not like you're incorporating a new piece, a new high usage piece like Chris Paul. Like this core has played together for a year now, gone through the gauntlet of a playoff run. Like, I think they're going to have a ton of regular season success, and I think they are just as much of a finals threat this year as they were last year. I want to talk about Deandre Ayton more.
Yeah.
We talked about him a lot. Heading into the playoffs last year, we said he was one of the biggest question marks for the Suns because we just didn't know which version of Deandre Ayton was going to show up most nights. He answered that question. He was just phenomenal through most of their playoff run. He did take more of a back seat as a scorer to Chris and to Devin during the regular season, but then especially in that Lakers series, I mean, he really made his impact felt in those first 4 games, and really throughout the entire Western Conference playoff run, he was sensational. Against Milwaukee, he had a great game 1 and then struggled a bit more throughout the rest of that series. So how do you think Ayton takes that experience, and then what do you expect out of him this year?
This is the year where I expect him to take a lot of those early components from earlier in his career to last year and puts it all together. So now he knows that he can have the defensive impact. Now he knows that he can also have an offensive impact, although sort of limited, especially. That's my choice, though. So I'm thinking this year, he's going to go, you know what? I want to mix and match. I want to go back to where I was from an offensive volume perspective, because I am that good. But I'm also that much smarter because of this year where I took a back seat, that I know when to shoot. I know when to dominate. I know when to really apply myself offensively. So now I'm actually looking for a pretty significant breakout for him. I would not be surprised if he ended up this year averaging 20 plus points. In fact, I'm kind of counting on it. I think they need it for one reason, and that's Chris is going to get older. You can't fully all the time rely on Chris to be a shot maker. And I realize that he's going to age gracefully and all that. But in the regular season, I would want to see Devin and Ayton be more of the shot takers and kind of let Chris fall into this tertiary role where he's more of a playmaker, more of a spot-up shooter, someone who can really play off of the attention of Ayton and Booker. Because Ayton and Booker is going to be the long-term future of this team.
Right.
I understand putting that on pause for Chris Paul and making the finals. It's a great story, but I also believe that they need to make sure that that tandem works and that duo is going to have an adequate relationship on the court moving forward. And that doesn't mean another year of Ayton settling for 10 shots a game.
Yeah. And I think a lot of this, again, was a feeling out process. First it was Chris and Devin had to figure out how do they fit best together. And then Ayton willingly took a backseat, which is commendable. I mean, how many number one picks be like, all right, cool. I am willing to be the number 3 option here. That's fine. Just whatever's best for the team.
Well, Anthony Bennett did that, but not by his own choice, I think.
Right. But then, I think now that they saw how dominant he can be in that playoff run, especially Chris, like he and Chris had some great chemistry in those games. So now, they can also build upon that. And Chris knows, okay, we're going to work to get this guy deep position. And when he does, I'm just going to throw him the damn ball because he is going to score.
Right.
So, the big question for him before the season is we're recording this in mid-September and he has still yet to sign a contract extension. Do you think he gets it done by the mid-October deadline? And what do you think is a fair deal for him?
Hi, Phoenix. Hi, Deandre. I want a max. Cool.
Yeah. I'm surprised it hasn't gotten done yet.
Yeah, it will. I mean, unless he's looking for something, unless there's some plan in place where, well, even I was about to argue his cap hold because he's the number 1 pick. His cap hold is pretty substantial, right?
Yeah, I would assume it's. I mean, he's earning $12.6 million next year, so. Yeah, it's $31.6 million.
Okay, yeah. So basically, there's no good reason not to get it done.
No. Well, unless Bob Sarver is just being cheap, which is always possible.
Well, I wouldn't be if I was him because.
No, I wouldn't either.
I would pay him the max.
Yeah, I'm right with you. I think. Again, he's not a unicorn big. He's not Joel Embiid. He's not Karl Anthony Towns. Like, I don't know if he's ever going to be a 30-point per game scorer in the NBA. He doesn't necessarily need to be with Devin Booker on this team. He's a great fit. You want to reward that type of talent.
I actually have a pretty good career comp for Ayton. And so I'm going to go back to the 90s and actually 80s and 90s here. So Patrick Ewing. Yeah, I know that he put up a lot of points. I know that he had plenty of years averaging 23, 24, and even I think he even had a 28-point year. But he was actually a better defender than he was a scorer, really. It was he was forced into that role because that was the era of centers and everything had to revolve around him. But that team was actually a lot better when he was in the 22-point range, 18 to 22, and you had guys like John Starks and Anthony Mason, those guys come up and add to the point total. They just played so much better when he was in a secondary role on that team. And I think Ayton is similar. He can score the rock. There is that level of competence on the offensive end. It's just a matter of figuring out how to optimize it, right? He's going to have years where he averages 20 plus. I'm sure of it. But he's just not going to be, David Robinson, Hakeem Olajuwon in that sense, Joel Embiid, Nikola Jokic. He's going to be a guy, like you just kind of said, who's going to be more of a balanced out guy, right? Equal amounts offense, equals amount defense, never giving up that defensive intensity. He knows that's his bread and butter. So he's sticking with that. And then everything else is kind of gravy at that point. So I think his career arc moving forward is actually going to be super interesting to watch because we all have these great expectations for someone like him who's built the way that he does. So we're like, yeah, he's going to go Shaq on it. He's going to average 32.
Right.
No, I don't think so. I think this is a different way of for him to attack his NBA career. And I'm very, very interested to see how that turns out. Yeah,
I am too. Let's hit Mikal Bridges quickly before we move on, because he is also up for an extension this year by the same deadline as Deandre Ayton.
Yeah, I'm not going to go max on that one.
No, I'm not either. But, I mean, he had I don't want to call it a breakout year because I think there's another leap he can still take, but still a career year. 13.5 points, that's a career high. 54.3% shooting, a career high. 42.5 from deep, a career high. 1.9 threes per game, like just across the board, career highs across the board. What do you think is a fair extension for him? And what do you expect out of him this year? Because he was a guy who we tabbed as a potential X factor for this Phoenix team as well in the playoffs. And he had in the game 2 against Milwaukee, he finally had that game. 27.7 rebounds, like the breakout Mikal Bridges game that we were expecting, and then just went right back into the background for the rest of that series.
Yeah, I expect more consistency from him. In terms of the contract, let's get that out of the way first. I think 20 million is like a fine compromise. For all sides, and an even 20. Like don't start at 18 and don't 20 every year on that contract straight on. I think that would just be smart and wise. And I love Mikal Bridges, don't get me wrong, but I also think it's very important that Phoenix don't fall into the hype. Because when I say that, I mean I think we have reached that level where, especially NBA Twitter, we talked about regarding Justice Winslow earlier. Mm-hmm. We're putting a little bit too much on Mikal. Like, oh, he's this fantastic player. Some people are like arguing that he's a max guy. Like, all right, relax. Like, he's a super versatile defender. That's great. He's a very reliable 3-point shooter. That's great. He's got a lot of size and length. That's obviously great. He's not Kevin Durant. He's not like one of those top tier stars. Relax. Like 20 million a year, that seems about right for both parties.
Yeah, because OG Anunoby got 4 years, 72, if I remember correctly.
Yes, correct.
And so with the cap continuing to rise, you'll expect a little bit of inflation, but putting him in that same like OG range where this could be a steal if he continues to develop, but he's also already 25, right?
That's the second thing, right? He's 21.
So I mean, it's good that he had the leap, but I think, again, I do think there is more room to grow. But he is going to be pigeonholed on this team in particular, especially with Chris Paul now under contract for the next few years. Like, you're not going to ask Mikal Bridges to create off the dribble 15 times a game. Like, you're going to be the token 3-and-D wing, and you can play that role really well. I agree with you on the 20 million-ish valuation every year. I would actually start it if you could do what the current Aaron Gordon contract and start it high and have it descend every year. I would go that route since Devin Booker is going to only increase and then DeAndre Ayton's going up every year. So if you can balance the two out, that would help.
I mean, I just don't see it because that would put them deep into luxury territory, and Robert Sarver would be like, "What? My luxury tax bill is what?"
Yeah, well, I mean, he's going to have to eat a big tax bill either way.
But if you front load Mikal, it's going to be even bigger those years.
Yeah, but that'll be smaller the later years when Booker and Ayton start skyrocketing.
Yeah, and then I guess when the new cap settles as well.
Mm-hmm. I don't know. Food for thought. But I'm still very bullish on this Suns team. I think anyone who called them a fluke last year is going to be sorely disappointed when they end up as a top 3 seed again this year.
Oh, yeah.